Pray. Our Heavenly Father, we are so grateful to be here today, and we ask your blessings upon this time together, to this club, to this building, to its officers, to its foundation, and to all who have come to hear the word that will be spoken later. And Lord, thank you for this weather. Thank you for our freedoms. Thank you for our servicemen who put their lives in harm's way for our protection. We pray for our administration, our country, our world. And we ask, Lord, that you bless this food. It's hands that prepared it and are to you, in it to our use. We ask this all in the name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
You may be seated.
She makes her announcement.
Yes, this is not patriotic. In fact, if this podium gets any higher, I'm going to have to get a stool like the little kids. But at any rate, you know, I believe in the Holy Spirit, and I also believe there are angels. And Sunday was no exception, as I had completed 2 services, and I was now sitting in the congregation, when at the collection time and the peace time, an individual just walked up to me. I didn't know who he was, and he disappeared just about as fast as he appeared. And he handed me over 100 backpacks. And my church has been just fantastic. One of my parishioners have already bought 96, and I had a donation of 22 this morning. And so the things are coming in. I need you people to step up to the plate with paper and notebooks and spirals and composition books with 3-ring binders, with loose leaf paper, crayons, erasers, no pencils and pens, please. And no folders. Oh my goodness sakes, I bet I have 3,000 folders. We have folders for years to come. But anyway, I'm just so grateful for all that people have been doing and giving, and I look forward to more success than we've had last year. And also, St. Mary Magdalene has joined and partnered with Christ Church, and they too are making collections of the same items. So we will meet our goal this year, and every kid that comes through will be packed with a backpack. Thank you.
Amen.
I guess we're going to have announcement time a little early. Come on up, girls.
That's because I'm so excited, and I wanted to make sure that everybody was excited as I am. First of all, I want to thank everybody for all that you're doing to make Christmas in August a success. I know I'm driving everybody crazy because I want to make sure that it is a success, and Karen has placed that on my shoulders, and I'm going to make sure that it is with all y'all's help. We are seeking right now hair cutters. Jane is going to talk a little bit about that. Go ahead, Jane.
Okay, I just was hoping that if any of you have any contacts with hairstylists, barbers that could donate their time, we're going to try to, we can break it up into shifts because I know it's a hard time on the weekend to give up your shop all day. But if you have any contacts there, please let us know. We really need to get some stylists and barbers there.
I went to about 7 shops yesterday, and school is starting a week early this year. So because of that, the shops are just swamped with students, and so we're having a little bit difficulty. So we need your help. But I also wanted to just add real quick to what Gretchen was saying. I don't know if she, Gretchen, did you share about the gentleman with the wad?
Yes.
Okay, of bills. All right. Anyway, thank you all. We're going to have a meeting on the 10th. Not the 4th of July. I just sent a blast out, Brett did, to meet on the 4th, but we're going to meet on the 10th at 11 o'clock. So all the key players that are on that wonderful org chart that Brett has done, and going over the map that Mac has done so graciously for us, will all be discussed on the 10th. So Steve, everybody be there on the 10th downstairs. with Linda, Brett, and everybody else. Okay? Thanks. Love you all.
Okay, you know, it's once in an opportunity that we have to recognize people who have really made an impact in our club. And if Judge wants to join me up here at the podium, we have a presentation we'd like to make to one of ours. And since this was during Judge's 2 years, I'll let him make the presentation on the whim.
Frankly, we found this plaque, literally. It has 2014, 2016 on it. It has someone's name, so obviously it's much deserved. For what, we're not sure. But I'd like to present this beautiful plaque for the Bradenton Kiwanis Club 2014, 2016 to our good friend Steve Tinsworth. Apparently we need to empty our closets more often. Well done for what you did.
So, I love it. If you're a visitor and a guest, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate, as you can know, each and every one of you, but also our membership as well. So we hope you'll plan on joining us and coming back as a guest. For those of you, I know that Christy went to every table looking for volunteers for Christmas in August. Make sure you turn those forms into her. It really does help if you help identify where you're planning on volunteering, as well as if you plan on bringing people with you. Make sure that they get the right information as well. And now we'll have one of our own introduced our guest speaker today.
Well, good afternoon. I have the privilege of introducing my boss. Now, what I'm doing is running out of bosses to introduce because this is my only third job as an adult. So, you know, I introduced Sheriff Wells not long ago, but for you, those that didn't know, a few months ago I transferred over to emergency management. So today it's my pleasure to introduce my boss, the Chief of Emergency Management. Sherilyn Burris joined Manatee County Emergency Management in 2014 and became their chief in late 2016. Prior to working for Manatee County, she worked as a public information officer for the Florida Division of Emergency Management and as a federal contractor for the Department of Health and Human Services. During her national position, she facilitated more than 100 active volunteers, serving nearly 500,000 dialysis and transplant patients through a network of more than 5,000 facilities to develop compliance and policy guidance, information outreach, and disaster-focused training. She has served as an incident commander for Hurricane Ike, the earthquake in Haiti, the H1N1 influenza outbreak, as the statewide planning section chief for the Gulf Coast Restoration Organization. She developed and implemented strategic statewide information collection analysis to determine the tangible and intangible damage to Florida's communities during the Deepwater Horizon drilling disaster. At the State of Florida Division of Emergency Management, she was deployed to Hurricane Dennis response and recovery, Hurricane Katrina response in Hancock County, Mississippi, and Hurricane Wilma response and recovery. She also represented the state of Florida in the New Horizon NASA launch to Pluto and nuclear power plant exercises. She is a graduate of the Florida State University with a BA in history. And the Jacksonville State University with a master's in public administration and emergency management. She is a certified emergency manager and a Florida professional emergency management. It's my pleasure to introduce my boss and our chief emergency management, Sherilyn Burris.
Thank you. I didn't realize we had so many Florida State fans. Yay! Go Noles. I'm actually from Georgia, so don't tell anybody that. So I'm just going to talk a little briefly about what my office does. We left some handouts on your table, namely what I call the one-stop shop. I don't go over everything in a lot of detail as far as what needs to be in your disaster kit or which hurricane evacuation level you live in or other details. This is a big fold-out brochure. I tell people, if you take nothing else, take this with you. For members that are parts of larger organizations, if you'd like to give these out to your stakeholders, clients, or customers, let me know. I'm happy to provide boxes upon boxes of English and Spanish for these. So hurricane season is about half our life. Actually, it's not about, it is half our life every year. So it really shouldn't come as a surprise when we go into hurricane season, although it feels like we have more time in the off season to prepare. How many people, this is your first hurricane season in Florida? So y'all are all experts then. If you were here last year for Hurricane Hermine and Hurricane Matthew, we learned some unique lessons that we had forgotten since the 2004 and 2005 season. And one of those is the storm doesn't actually have to come anywhere near us to make an impact for us. On the top right, it's a little difficult to see, but these are the center tracks of storms that have crossed or made landfall in Florida. It's almost impossible to see, but I use this graphic on a bigger scale to point out that this is only the center of the track. One of the things that this brochure does not tell you very much about is the nature of meteorology and hurricanes. So I try to focus a little bit on what I talk about to make sure that you understand why hurricanes are so dangerous. So I don't go into detail. Kits and supplies, I'm gonna skip. We've gotten dramatically improved in the past 10, 12 years for meteorology. I'm not a meteorologist. I consider myself more of a translator, that I take their little scientific speak and I tell normal people what it means. And that has improved, but it's not perfect. It's a little bit of an art and a lot of science. But they are nowhere near precise. Sometimes they are off, as we've seen with the past couple of years, where they think a storm is going to go, where they think it's going to impact, what kind of impacts it's going to have, is a little bit of a gamble. And it's not always right. And they actually do the science to factor in wrong answers. Funny enough, that's what they call the error cone. What they don't tell you, and what you'll probably not find in writing, is that cone that we all know and love is technically only right 66% of the time, and that's on purpose. So there's a lot of errors outside of the cone. The other thing that we learned from Hurricane Hermine and Matthew last year is even though we know what kind of rainfall or winds we're expecting, some of the timing is sometimes off. Best example is on a random, I think it was a Wednesday afternoon last year, the Weather Service said, oh, well, we're not in the cone of error for Hurricane Hermine, but we might get about 8 inches of rain within the next 5 days. They weren't technically wrong, but we got all 8 inches of that in about 5 hours. So it was within 5 days. It was just all in 1 day. So they were not technically wrong. Unfortunately, it's hard to account for that. We did our best with 8 inches of rain in the afternoon, and a lot of people experienced inland flooding and city flooding, so your streets, your yards were all underwater, and it's just the nature we live in Florida. The other thing that's not really factored into a lot of these cones and forecasts is it was high tide that day. So when we got all of that rain, it was already high tide, so the water had nowhere to go. When the tide went down, the water will go down, and naturally it just takes time in Florida for that to happen. What I have on the slides right now is Tropical Storm Cindy. So I talked to some people last week and about where they think the hurricane is going to go, or when you look up the weather on the Weather Service or Weather Underground or whatever your preferred format is, you always see that straight line, and then there's kind of a little bit of a cone around it. And we assume that means that's where the storm is. But it's really a little more challenging than that with hurricanes. What makes them so dangerous and why they have little individual names is they have a lot of factors that we don't capture very well. And we, meaning meteorologists and people that talk to you about what your risks are. So hurricanes can be moving very fast. They can go anywhere from 2 miles an hour to 22 miles an hour, and how fast they're coming at you. Think of it like getting out of the way of a baseball. You can step out of the way of a slow-moving ball a little more challenging to step out of the way of a fast-moving ball. The other example that we've learned since '04 and '05 is the size of the storm really matters. So Hurricane Charlie was not very wide, just maybe a couple counties wide as far as how far the storm winds extended from the center. We're always very good about the center. We focus on the center. Hurricane Ike, the winds extended hundreds of miles on each side, and that made a huge difference to Galveston Island. Even though Ike was only a Category 2, it had 20 feet of storm surge. Hurricane Charlie was a Category 4, and it had 7 feet of storm surge. So the size of the storm matters, and that's not captured in any of these graphics. Tropical Storm Cindy, best example ever. Last week we had an abundance of rainfall, maybe I think it was Monday, Tuesday afternoon, huge amount of rain. If you took a look at the skinny black line and the cone of error, which is more shown on the right-hand side, the left-hand side, we always assume that means that's as far as the impacts go. It's not. They took the storm cone on the right-hand side, that's just the outline of that track of where the cone of uncertainty is, and then they mapped it with how much rainfall the areas got. So you'll notice in the picture on the right how much rain was actually outside of that cone. So you're looking at like the Mobile Bay area got upwards to 10 inches of rain. But the storm was even a couple hundred miles to the other side. And unfortunately, stuff like that's not captured in a brochure like this. We're really, really good in Florida at categories. We've always had categories. We're really good. Tropical storm is okay. You're probably still out playing golf. And then a Category 5, everybody knows, is a very bad day. What meteorologists have done in the past 10 years with weather and with hurricane forecast is they took how much storm surge we could see, and they removed it from the wind scale. So when we say Category 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, that's only talking about how fast the wind speed is moving inside of the storm. It doesn't capture if it's big or small, it doesn't capture if it's slow or fast, and it doesn't capture storm surge. I always use the example for storm surge. It's like if you were in a bathtub or a swimming pool and you push your hands and kind of create a big wave or a big wall. Storm surge is that big push of water, and it's salt water from the Gulf of Mexico, in our case, onto land. Sometimes it has to do with the category of the storm, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Sometimes it has to do with the direction of the storm, where it's coming from, where it's going, how much rainfall is associated with it. Is it a big storm, little storm, slow-moving storm, fast-moving storm? There are a lot of factors that go into storm surge, and categories don't capture that very well. Like I said, Hurricane Ike was only a Category 2. It had almost as much storm surge as Hurricane Katrina. And so we've tried to go out and talk to people about that. When you see a storm coming your way, understand that it doesn't calculate how much rainfall we could get. It doesn't calculate what the storm surge is going to be. It only calculates what the wind speed is for category. So we evacuate levels in Manatee County for storm surge, and it's pretty consistent across the board with all of Florida coastal counties. So I've left a little postcard on each of your tables. It's what we call learn your level. Hurricane evacuation levels are only based on storm surge, so that big wall of salt water. Or if you live in a mobile home or a manufactured home, those houses, those structures just can't withstand the wind. So it doesn't matter where a mobile home or manufactured home is on the colored map, they'll still have to evacuate. I call these levels, whereas we used to call them zones, and sometimes I still say zones. Most of the rest of Florida also calls them hurricane evacuation zones, because this is not like freshwater flooding or FEMA flood zones. And I get a lot of angry phone calls from people who think that this is going to raise their flood insurance rates. And I have to tell them a good way to remember it is FEMA, freshwater flooding, FFF, or saltwater storm surge. So those all start with S. This is only how high saltwater can get. And what I'm realizing this year when I go out and talk to people is this is actually, we would think it's simple because we've lived here so long. But for new people, they look at me and go, what does this mean? One of my favorite people with the National Hurricane Center's name is Jamie Rome, and he is very Southern. He's got this very Southern accent, North Carolina drawl. And when he goes out to talk to people, and he loves his job, storm surge used to be calculated by sea level, which is only very helpful if you happen to know what sea level you're at and can do math very quickly with a Category 5 coming your way. So he has helped develop a better way to evaluate storm surge and the risk and the threat, and we call it lovingly height above the dirt. So, very Southern. So I'm from Georgia. This is how high the salt water can be from the Gulf of Mexico above the dirt. So it doesn't matter if you're at 8 feet above sea level or 12 feet above sea level. You don't need to know how high you are. They've calculated that for you in the colors. So this is height of water above the dirt. And obviously, if you live near the Gulf of Mexico, you're at greater risk. And if you live in a low-lying area, you're at greater risk. So those red areas is up to 11 feet of salt water above the dirt. So I'm only 5 feet and change. That's pretty high. So we evacuate for that. On the other side is what we call our Code Red Reverse 911 system. This is how we notify people of if we're going to have a hurricane evacuation. We also have a lot of neat things that we did not have in 2004 and 2005. Pretty much everybody in the room has a smartphone. Yeah? Okay. Who doesn't have a smartphone? Okay, you don't need to have a smartphone to sign up for Code Red. You don't need to have a cell phone to sign up for Code Red. You can sign up landlines, cell phone lines, emails, text messages. You can sign up your home number. You can sign up your business number. You can sign up your home address. You can sign up your business address. I love systems like this because I have family that still calls me wanting to know what their weather is in Georgia. And the neat thing about a system like Code Red is if you have family that doesn't live here that wants to get notified of Manatee County, what we are, what we're doing, is it a hurricane, what shelters are open, they can sign up as well. Have you ever gotten an Amber Alert on your phone? For those people that have, your cell phone is called a wireless emergency alert capable. So on the bottom right, this is a free service. It's just part of cell phone towers. It doesn't collect information from you. It just sends information to you by tower. A lot of folks also get the silver alerts on their phone or the reverse, the message systems over the interstate. They are one-way pieces of information. If we have a severe weather threat in Florida, you will get a wireless emergency alert if they are capable on your phone and if that setting is turned on. If you ever need help setting up your wireless emergency alert or setting up your Code Red phone number, I am always happy to walk you through it. While this sounds super easy, technology is sometimes a challenge, and I'm happy to sign people up if you need help. The top left is a weather radio. How many people have a weather radio? How many people have it on even though it beeps all the time for no reason? I love weather radios. They are the first and best #1 source of information for weather alerts. Unfortunately, I consider myself more of a cell phone kind of person. I may or may not be in the room where the radio is, whereas my cell phone is usually with me at all times. The National Weather Service sends out alerts directly to weather radios. This is extremely helpful for things that have immediate impact, like a tornado. You don't have a lot of notice, so you need all of the time you can get. And one of those ways is, of course, to get it straight from the Weather Service through a weather radio. The last picture on this slide is the FEMA app. Everybody has an app. Red Cross has an app. A lot of local news agencies all have apps, and they can push you information as well. What I like about the FEMA app is it will send you notices about what's going on in our community automatically, along with your weather updates, along with where shelters are, what hurricane evacuation level you live in, as well as things you need in your kit and things you need to think about for your disaster plan, all in one app. And that's super helpful to only have to go to one place to find information. I throw in that hurricane evacuation levels are not the same thing as those categories. That's actually new since '04 and '05, so understand that Category 1 storm does not translate to hurricane evacuation level A. Just keep that in mind, and that, of course, they're not the same thing as flood zones. We have an interactive GIS map, because I know this is extremely small and hard to read. If you go to our website, at the bottom of that, you can find your evacuation level. So my office, we're kind of a policy and procedure-driven organization. We don't have a lot of direct interface with the public. We're there to support the government and make sure that our first responders have the information that they need. In a typical storm, we would create and recommend a local state of emergency to the Board of County Commissioners, who then would be able to issue an evacuation order if we needed it. So what I do every day and in my sleep is I think of everything that could possibly go wrong based on any given storm scenario ever. And that's a lot of what I do all day. That's my hobby. How many people have been through a hurricane evacuation? How many people have been through regular 5 o'clock traffic in Manatee County? I laughed the last time I showed this picture. Somebody goes, well, that just looks like I-75 on a good day. Well, yes, it does. I think yesterday we had some really bad northbound traffic. If we do have to issue an evacuation order, keep in mind how bad roads are normally and leave as early as possible. Little common sense says you don't have to wait until we issue an evacuation order to leave. If you have a vehicle and gas and a place to go, by all means, don't wait for us to issue the evacuation order. Be very, very patient. I don't know if I have a slide on it or not. The number one thing that I tell my family, and I will call them as soon as I look at a map for any kind of hurricane impact, is Florida gets all of our gasoline by boat. We don't have underground pipelines. If any reason those ports are shut down and can't receive gasoline to our port, that means our supply goes down. What happens when our supply goes down? The price goes up. So please, please, during hurricane season and every chance that you get, fill up your car with gas. I don't let my car get down past half a tank during hurricane season. That's the number one piece of advice that's never written down anywhere. If you see something brewing in the Gulf of Mexico, go get gas. How many people have been camping with 500 of their closest friends without electricity in a very small room? One person. Are you a shelter volunteer? No. Okay. Yes, I'm not one for camping with 500 people without electricity. So I tell people, sheltering is an option to save your life. We do have shelters. They are listed in here. They are in our public schools, and they are on the floor. If you do go to a shelter, you are required, or you should, bring your own bedding. I slept on a military cot for the first time during Hurricane Matthew, and I tell you, I bought an air mattress immediately after that. Funny enough, I slept on a concrete floor in Hurricane Katrina, and I was fine. But that was 12 years ago, and I was much younger. With a shelter, you have to make sure you bring all of your supplies with you. There's very basic food and water. You're not going to have a private room. There's no private bathroom. There's probably not a shower. Again, it's not always very comfortable, but it will save your life. We have the special needs shelter as well. That's the one shelter that's designated for people with electricity-dependent medical needs, and pet shelters where you can bring your dog or cat. No crazy pets. Following a disaster, we issue some different functions out of our Emergency Operations Center. The first one is first in teams, and those are the guys that push everything off the road so that first responders can get in to assess the damage and any impact to human needs. So what do we need? What resources should be where? Do we have running water in this neighborhood or that neighborhood? And then figure out what resources we have to send to those damaged areas. That's actually a lot longer process than you would think. One of the biggest questions I'm getting this year is how do people get back early? And I understand that people want to get back to see their homes, to see the damage, to help. But under no condition, if a place is unsafe for first responders to go, you will not be getting back in any sooner. When the area is deemed safe, it will be open and available. I'm not sure we've had that in Manatee County, and I don't think a lot of people understand what devastating impact that would be here. In order for an area to actually be closed, it has to be unsafe. We didn't have any area that was closed after Hurricane Hermine. It was almost business as usual, except for like the 3 feet of water. So we haven't really done this recently. And so a lot of people that have moved to Florida don't understand what this really looks like, to have a seriously devastated area and how long this process is going to take. In a major storm, it would take months. In a Katrina situation, they're still recovering, and it's been 12 years later. I have worked with a lot of people that even went to Hurricane Andrew, and recovery takes decades. Damage assessment, this is probably a FEMA team on the bottom right. They come out and they help us determine where we can provide federal resources to rebuild. I will caution people with our current political climate, this resource is a luxury. External federal assistance for finances and rebuilding our roads and bridges is never guaranteed. There are lots of disaster situations that don't get any reimbursement or financial assistance. So we would really like to be able to take care of ourselves and rebuild those resources. Re-entry. Actually, those are all the slides I have. I could talk for hurricanes for hours. Do you guys have any questions or personal stories or tidbits? Brett.
Could you let the audience know, if we were to get an impact like, let's say, Charlie, which was supposed to come here but didn't, what resources outside Manatee County, and how's that organized, and who will be coming to help?
I love this question. Everybody comes to help. We need to assess what we have before the storm, and Charlie is a really good scenario. So if Charlie made landfall here, my first call is to the state of Florida in Tallahassee, and they tell me, okay, what do you need? Well, I need 100 police officers, I need 12 fire trucks, 6 ambulances, 3,000 sandbags, or what have you, and I give them a wish list. In the state of Florida, we all have what's called a statewide mutual aid agreement. Every county is part of it. If I need a resource, I call Tallahassee, and Tallahassee will call the other counties and say, who's got this resource and who can get there right now? It's a really neat way that Florida works, that not every state does it that way. That's not how, say, North Carolina does it or how Georgia does it. It's a really neat thing in Florida. The other thing is, with people coming, there are organizations and businesses that have kind of these automatic calls for aid, and electricity providers are one of the best examples of it. If you have been through a major storm season, if you were here in 2004 and 2005, you could be driving down the interstate and just pass FPL truck after FPL truck, just dozens of them convoyed down the highway. FPL does it, debris contractors do it, so the Asplund, those big orange trucks, do it. They understand that a lot of times we can't afford to wait until the impact to send all of that help. So FPL and electricity providers have an automatic call for aid, and they will just go. They will come from all over the country, in the case of Katrina, all over the world to help. Yes, sir.
Could you talk a little bit about correlation between hurricane formation, El Nino effects, and how global warming and the melting of the polar ice caps is like cooling the water, which is actually the key for the water, is the fuel for hurricanes. How that affects hurricane formation, and if global warming the trend continues the way it is, are we looking at less hurricanes than we've seen in the past, or less intense hurricanes? How does that work?
I'm not a scientist, so I'm going to defer that to the National Weather Service, but I can have an answer for you in email. I try not to think about the why too much. And I tried to work this out in my head. If someone asks me how many storms we think we're going to have this year, my answer is just I'm usually dumbfounded, because it doesn't matter how many. I have to do my job perfectly every time, whether we don't have any storms or whether we have 100 storms. So what I do does not change. It doesn't matter why we have more hurricanes or fewer hurricanes. I still have to do this task. It's kind of like if I caught a cold and I go to the doctor, I don't say, why did I catch a cold or how did I catch this cold? I just say, give me something for my cold. And that's what I talk with scientists all the time. I don't really concern myself with why, I just concern myself with how to do our job better. But I can get you an answer.
You might tell him there's not any global warming.
Atmospheric redeployment or whatever they call it. It doesn't matter if we have more or fewer. I would much prefer fewer hurricanes, but not at the trade-off of some other climactical. Yes, sir.
I've lived in Manatee County since 1961, and we've got to be some of the luckiest people in the world because we've never had a real storm. However, I did have relatives that lived in Homestead for Andrew, and I can tell you that we went down there to help them out, and there was nothing taller than that white table on the podium, and that included gas stations or anything else that you would use for a landmark to get to any place that you were going. So you need to heed the warning.
Yes, absolutely. Any other questions?
Can we have it for Miss Cheryl Lynn? And Cheryl Lynn, as is our tradition here at Braden and Kiwanis, to present you with the golden rule to measure your future success and hopefully not the measure of storms. So, thank you so much. Okay. Remember, take the information home with you that is at the tables. Also, we would ask that, as she suggested, that if you have an outlet to share those with either your clients or those that you work with so they can also properly be prepared, she'd be more than willing to share those. Information is key in being ready for a storm. And remember, Christmas in August, we wish you well for the 4th of July. Remember, there is no meeting next week. With that, safe travels to anyone and everyone. And with that, we're adjourned.